Sanin, and tonight, ladies and gentlemen, there is football on television. Can you believe it? The defending champion Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Houston Texans tonight in the season opening Thursday night game. And after all these months, after the COVID situation has raged through this world and continues to do so, we finally have football back in our lives to make us feel at least normal for a little while. And that's very exciting. Of course, on the show tonight, we're going to do something that I like to call a better pregame show. Instead of listening to Jimmy and Howie and Terry or Rodney Harrison and Tony Dungy kind of laugh at their own jokes and, be all buddy buddy, we're going to talk about what really matters before Chiefs and Texans. And that's betting on football, because that's what you're here for. You're here to win some money betting on the NFL. We're going to help you do that. Starting with tonight's game right here on the GBI Show, we're also going to unveil a new segment called Quick Slants, where I run through every game in the week to come in the NFL, get you what you need to know, and let you know if I have any action on those games as well. At the end of the show, we'll hit you with my picks for this coming week of games. And of course, we will also get you the BetQL Game of the Week. Every week, we'll be highlighting a game using BetQL's betting information. Of course, the show tonight, as is the case every night, brought to you by BetQL.co. Use promo code SANIN, SANIN, at the bottom of your screen at BetQL.co to get 20% off your BetQL subscriptions, whether you want to try it out for a week, go for the whole season, go for a whole year. It's up to you, BetQL.co. Some great data. We'll show you what some of that looks like later in the show, or at least tell you about it, as we preview week one in the NFL. Of course, it starts tonight as the Chiefs and Texans square off. The Chiefs, 9.5-point favorites as of a few minutes ago. Those numbers coming from BetQL.co. Total for the game, 53.5. And of course, this is a game that we saw played twice last season. We saw these teams actually split their two games last year. During the regular season, it was week 6. We saw the Texans defeat the Chiefs 31-24. And then in the playoffs, of course, who could forget the Texans getting out to that crazy hot start, blocking a punt. They're feeling themselves, and Patrick Mahomes then blew them off the face of the earth. The rest of that game, a 51-point outburst by the Chiefs in the divisional round to win 51-31. Of course, that game getting the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game. They went on to win the Super Bowl later in the year. Now, this game, it's a big number. I will grant you that. But I think there still is a reason to take the defending champion Chiefs in this game. And that reason, the biggest one for me, is continuity. The Chiefs, largely the same team on offense that you saw last year, and a lot of people concerned as to what offenses are going to look like early in the season. I can't tell you how many times I have heard and I have read people saying early in the season, with no preseason, limited practice time due to COVID, that we're going to see a lot of unders this early portion of the year, that we're going to see a lot of teams looking out of rhythm in the early portion of the year. Well, the Chiefs, I don't think will have the same problem in the early portion of the season, because their offense largely is exactly the same as what you saw last year. Yes, on the offensive line, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif will not be there. He opted out due to COVID. Clyde Edwards-Helaire slides in at running back after Damian Williams opted out. LaShawn McCoy went to Tampa Bay. But largely the same offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. The same cannot be said for the Houston Texans. And I think that starts, obviously, with the loss of DeAndre Hopkins. Bill O'Brien, for better or for worse, likely to be worse because it's a move made by Bill O'Brien, but he trades away DeAndre Hopkins to Arizona. They get David Johnson in return. David Johnson being a player who, first of all, he's new. He's got to figure out how to fit into this team. But on top of that, he's a guy who's been hurt the last couple of seasons. Hasn't had a lot of touches, hasn't had a lot of game action. What's he going to look like early in the year? That's very important. Brandon Cooks, unlikely to play tonight for the Houston Texans. Of course, he was one of the acquisitions brought in with the hope of replacing DeAndre Hopkins. Well, that's not going to be the case tonight. Randall Cobb also sliding in for Houston, who could be dangerous this evening against a banged up Kansas City secondary. We'll talk about them in just a moment. And can Will Fuller stay on the field? That's, you talk about continuity, the same players being on a team, but Will Fuller has missed a lot of action as well. I was joking around about it earlier in the day. Does Deshaun Watson even remember who Will Fuller is because of all the time that he has missed over the last few seasons for the Texans? So I think a big edge in offensive continuity going the way of the Chiefs could very well play a factor here. Now, we talk about continuity in the offensive end. On the defensive end, both teams losing some players as well. Jaleel Addae and Jonathan Joseph for the Texans, they depart. The Chiefs, they lose a few players, Mo Claiborne, Emmanuel Ogbah. They lose Reggie Ragland, who's a solid linebacker. And, of course, Bashaud Breeland, which it might be a positive given the way his career has played out, but he will not be playing tonight for Kansas City either. So some question marks on the defensive side of the ball for both teams. And I think, another angle that doesn't get discussed when it comes to this COVID situation and the lack of preseason, the lack of practice time, those defenders did not get a full training program and really a lot of opportunities to make physical contact with offensive players. So what's the tackling going to be like tonight? Another reason why I think a more well-oiled machine in the Chiefs offense is going to have an advantage in a week one game. Will the Texans be able to tackle those guys, especially the speedsters like Tyreek Hill and Mecole Hardman? Now, the Texans, if you look back at the two games that these two teams played last season, they actually outgained Kansas City in both games. It was slight in the divisional round, and obviously the Chiefs put up 51 points. So being outgained in that game for Kansas City, not the biggest deal because they were able to, at least to some degree, take the foot off the gas late in that game, whereas the Texans needed to play like their hair was on fire in order to try and salvage their season. But in that Week 6 game, Houston vastly outgained the Kansas City Chiefs, 472 to 309 in that game. And a big reason that the Texans were so successful offensively in both games against the Chiefs last year, of course, was Deshaun Watson, who just got paid a boatload of money to remain the quarterback there in Houston. Watson with 6 total touchdowns in those two games. And something worth keeping your eye on, he had 3 rushing scores in those two games. So very effective with his legs was Watson, which begs the question now with DeAndre Hopkins not in the picture for this Houston Texans team, who's kind of his get out of jail free card, so to speak. Is he going to be able to now still be effective with the legs against the Chiefs? So they're going to be able to key in on the quarterback mobility a little bit more. Now, Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, who also got paid a boatload of money this offseason by his team. He's almost halfway to $1 billion when this contract is all said and done. Kind of up and down during these games against Houston last year. He completed about 60% of his passes, which is not great by any stretch of the imagination, but he had a fantastic connection with Tyreek Hill in the two games to make up for that lower completion percentage. Of course, Tyreek Hill, one of the most explosive players in the history of the NFL, proved it against the Texans last year. He had 5 touchdowns through the air in just 2 games, including 3 in that divisional playoff win. So without Jonathan Joseph in the picture, what's it going to look like trying to defend Tyreek Hill? Can anybody on that Texans defense do it? Last year, the answer was no. If the answer remains no this time around, things could get ugly pretty quickly for the Houston Texans. Of course, worth keeping in mind that this is a game where fans will be in attendance. As we go to quick slants and we talk about every game, we'll give you a quick update on all of the different fan situations in these stadiums. The Chiefs, one of the teams, you can say they're lucky, then that brings up a whole, do you think there should be fans there? I am not qualified to moderate that debate. What I am here to tell you is that there should be around 16,000 fans in attendance for tonight. People are going to get their rings, the banner's going to go up, all the pomp and circumstance. And of course, that's a benefit to the Chiefs. It's better than having nobody in the building. It's not going to be the world's loudest stadium the way it usually is, but a little something to push the Chiefs in the forward direction. Now, my pick for this game is the Kansas City Chiefs -9. I got it at -9 earlier in the day. I'm fine with you taking -9.5. And again, continuity, the big key to me. You come out there in the first half, it's your first game, first real game action since January. You were holed up at home throughout most of the offseason. Give me Patrick Mahomes. Give me a group of players that he is familiar with over the situation in Houston where the best offensive player on that team was just traded away for a guy who might not still be very useful in an offense for the Texans. A lot of new parts there. Again, continuity, the key. I like the Chiefs -9. I also like some props in this game that I think are worth taking a look at. We said before the season during our AFC West preview, I like Clyde Edwards-Helaire to get over 8 touchdowns this season on the ground. I think he might get into the end zone here, but something to keep in mind for the full season. As far as this game is concerned, I like a couple of Tyreek Hill props just given his history against the Houston Texans. He's -115 to score at any time in this game. I think it's undeniable that he'll get into the end zone tonight. Obviously possible that he doesn't, but given his history against the Texans, even if they key in on him, I just think his physical gifts combined with what Patrick Mahomes is able to do in the deep passing game will get him into the end zone at some point this evening. Also related to Tyreek Hill and getting into the end zone, I like him at +850 to be the first player to score a touchdown in this game on top of Kansas City winning the game. That was +850 at DraftKings Sportsbook earlier today if you are in a DraftKings market. Elsewhere, and this is a prop that I think is a little contrarian, and that's one of the reasons I like it as much as I do, but Patrick Mahomes under 20.5 yards on the ground. You can find it around even money. It was even money this afternoon at DraftKings. Mahomes, mixed results on the ground against the Texans during their 2 matchups last season. During the Week 6 game in the regular season, nothing on the ground whatsoever. I think he had 1 carry for -1 yard. Not exactly looking to move out of the pocket and run. In the playoffs, he tore the Texans apart. He had 53 rushing yards, had that memorable run where he escaped and he spun around. He did a triple axel, if I remember correctly. And I mean, that alone was a 21-yard run. I don't think he gets anywhere near 20 today, not because he's not capable, not because the Texans defense will do anything to limit it. I just think in the first game back in the regular season, with the betting public having that image of Mahomes escaping a million Texans defenders fresh in their mind, I think the under is the play there. I think he stays in the pocket today. I think the goal today, obviously, besides winning the game, is going to be keeping Patrick Mahomes, the golden goose, the face and future of this franchise, from suffering another injury and subjecting us to more guys like Matt Moore. I think Chad Henney's on the roster. Keeping those guys on the bench and keeping Mahomes, the $500 million man, on the field going forward for the Chiefs. So that's why I have the under there. And I also, just to get it out there, I'm not interested in the total in tonight's game. 53.5. Again, we don't know exactly what we're getting from Houston on the offensive side of the ball. And we don't know how much this rust, how much the COVID layoff is going to affect either of these teams. So I'd rather stay away from the total and focus on the personnel advantages of the Chiefs here tonight. I think they're going to cover the 9. I think they'll cover the 9.5 as well. Wouldn't play at anything above that, but I'm sure some already did as this opened up as a 10.5 point spread. So there is your sort of degenerate pregame show instead of listening to Mike Tirico and I don't know if Bob Costas is still around. Instead, you can listen to me talk about the one thing you do care about when it comes to the NFL, and that's gambling. So thank you for indulging me in that. Now that we've covered the pregame show portion of the GBI show, let's talk about the BetQL game of the week. And we are highlighting the Cleveland Browns +7 at the Baltimore Ravens, a divisional matchup and a lot of intrigue here, given that the Ravens just came off of a playoff humiliation and The Browns are coming off of seasons of humiliation. And the question is, which one of them will come out on top? Now, this is a number that has moved quite a bit as the Ravens were up around 8.5-point favorites previously in the offseason. And the reason for that, you have a mismatch between the money coming in on each team and the ticket count on each team. According to BetQL, 52% of the tickets in on Baltimore. Again, a team that won 12 straight regular season games to end last year, a team with Lamar Jackson, the MVP, the Madden cover guy. Betting public, honestly surprised it's not a bigger disparity in terms of tickets, but I guess that number above 7 points was a bit too much for people to want to lay with Baltimore, given what they saw from them their last time out. And then Cleveland getting 53% of the money. So not a huge disparity, but something there that tells you, okay, some of the bigger bettors are certainly on the Cleveland Browns here. And according to BetQL projections, that original number of 8.5 was pretty much dead on. They have an 8.5-point spread on BetQL as well using their data. So some value if you are interested in laying the points on the Ravens at what would have been the opening line. Kind of a similar situation what we see in this Thursday night game where the number was up around 10.5. You let it go down and then you can hit the favorite at a favorable number. Similar situation here with the Browns. Now, if you're looking for information like that on every NFL game for the season, BetQL.co is your place. You can find everything I just mentioned about the Browns and the Ravens for every NFL game this season. Subscribe today. Don't miss out on your chance to find those spots where the projected spread is higher or lower than the actual number of places where you might be able to get some value on one side or the other. Use promo code Sanin, S-A-N-I-N, at the bottom of your screen. Save 20% on all BetQL subscriptions for the upcoming NFL season. Whether you want to do a week, a year, something in between, totally up to you. 20% off at BetQL.co with promo code Sanin. Now, every week on Thursday, we're going to do a segment called Quick Slants. And what that is we are going to run through every game on the NFL schedule. We're going to give you a quick preview. That's why it's not called slow slants. It is quick slants. We're going to give you quick previews, what you need to think about before betting on every single NFL game. And it's going to be tough early in the season because without a bye week, there are 16 games each week. Later in the season, you'll have 10, you'll have 12. There'll be a little bit more room for those games to breathe. Not right now. We are going 16 games. We've already got 2 of them out of the way. 14 to go. Get ready for quick slants. We'll start with the Jets 6.5-point dogs at the Bills. Total 39.5. Jets, of course, started last season blowing a double-digit lead to the Bills. And this might be a great spot for the under. Both teams top 11 in defense, according to Football Outsiders rankings last year. Both top 5 in the league in yards against per play. Neither one giving up more than 5 yards a play on the season. Both times these teams played, they failed to eclipse 33 points last season. And as I said, that came in week 1 last year when the Jets were up 16-0 deep into the second half. So really, number of total points in that game should have been lower as well. Could be a great under spot, especially with the lack of time for these offenses to gel, some new parts coming in on both of these offenses. So could be an under. No fans in attendance, by the way, at Buffalo. Next, Dolphins plus 6.5 at the Patriots. Total is 42. Cam Newton and Ryan Fitzpatrick squaring off in just a weird quarterback matchup. Dolphins 4-2 against the spread last season in division games. They lost 43-0 to the Patriots early in the year when it looked like they might go 0-16, but they did beat them at the end of the season 27-24. Not sure what to expect from either roster at this point, with Cam Newton and Ryan Fitzpatrick leading offenses that they were not in charge of last year. No fans in attendance at Gillette, and a game that really tough to justify a play, at least from my perspective, on either side with all the uncertainty surrounding these teams. Next up, Packers 2.5-point dogs at the Vikings. Total 45. Packers winning both matchups against the Vikings last season. Their second year now with the coach-quarterback combo of LaFleur and Rodgers. Kirk Cousins struggles notoriously against teams with above 500 records. Packers fell into that category last year, very well could do it again this year. The home field advantage for the Vikings, non-existent, no fans, but we will still get that annoying Viking horn. We'll see what effect that has on the game, besides making me want to plug my ears. Line came down from 3.5, now 2.5. The Vikings are favored by. Could be a spot to play the Packers on the money line if you feel like getting a little adventurous. Next up, Raiders, 3-point favorites at the Panthers. 47.5 is the total. Raiders open as 1-point dogs. Line is swung all the way through 0 to 3. Full field goal advantage for the Raiders. Continuity, again, a factor here. For better or worse, this Raiders team, they've been together. Derek Carr's been the quarterback, whereas the Panthers, Teddy Bridgewater's first game, Matt Rule's first game as head coach, first game for Joe Brady as offensive coordinator. How are all those pieces going to come together with so little time to put them together? And it's really been reflected in the market. I'm not sure that I dislike the Raiders even as field goal favorites, though I'd probably stay away just because nowhere near the best number you could have gotten on that contest. In the AFC South, Colts, 8-point favorites at the Jaguars, a road divisional favorite. Usually doesn't bode well for that team. Total 45. But we are, of course, facing some unique circumstances when it comes to the Jaguars, as they're basically saying, listen, we are going to tank this season, and we want Trevor Lawrence, just based on all the moves that they've made so far this season to get rid of any players that can be discerned as talented, with the exception maybe of Miles Jack. 25% fan capacity for this game for the Jaguars. I am shocked that Florida is the state letting fans into stands. And I got to be honest, I might prefer the coronavirus to going and watching this Jaguars team in person, especially in the Florida heat in September, but that's just a personal preference. Again, tanking team in the Jags, but we don't know what we have in the Colts with Phillip Rivers. He's a guy accustomed to playing close games because he's somebody who turns the ball over so much that even games that should be easy wins get a little interesting with him. Not going to lay a touchdown on the road in a division game with a new quarterback who hasn't had a lot of time to learn that new offense. Seahawks, 2-point favorites at the Falcons, total 49. Seahawks open as 1-point favorites. It's jumped up another point from there. Another early start game for a West Coast team here. Shouldn't be as impactful in week 1, but something worth keeping an eye on. Seattle, 6-3-1 last season as a road team. That, of course, including the playoffs, and helping them is the fact that there are no fans in the stands in Atlanta for this game. But we'll see if the Falcons, with Dan Quinn possibly being on the hot seat, Thomas Dimitroff, the GM, possibly being on the hot seat as well, if they play with a sense of urgency, and if Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Calvin Ridley can get it together with the help now of Todd Gurley in the backfield for the Falcons. I don't love this one on either side either. Next, we have an NFC North showdown when the Bears come in as 3-point dogs at Detroit against the Lions. Both teams coming in with a lot of question marks this season. Bears have won 4 straight against Detroit dating back to the 2018 season. Most recently, they played on Thanksgiving with the Bears winning in Detroit in that game. That was, by the way, the only time Chicago won a game against the spread as a road team. Something worth keeping an eye on here. And you'll wonder if things will get even worse for Chicago this season, given the current quarterback controversy they have. Mitchell Trubisky will start. Nick Foles breathing down his neck. You know what they say, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Keep that in mind, kids. When you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And of course, Detroit might make things tougher on quarterbacks this year with the drafting of Jeff Okudah. Again, I don't want anything to do with either of these dumpster fire teams in this NFC North showdown. Next, an NFC East showdown. And speaking of dumpster fires, it is being hosted by a dumpster fire on and off the field in the Washington football team. They enter this game as 5.5-point home dogs in the division against the Philadelphia Eagles. Total 42.5. And this is a game that I am very interested in from a total perspective. Washington lost 2 games to the Eagles last season. They scored 27 points in both. These teams lit each other up, moving up and down the field against one another last year. I expect similar results this year. You have a lot of room with that total compared to what these teams put up against each other last year. And I don't see any reason that they're going to stop putting up points against each other. I think the over 42.5 might be one of the best bets of the week. One that's flying under the radar as, well, I guess there's nothing all that glamorous about a Washington football team total. Fair enough. Next, we look at the Los Angeles Chargers. I almost said San Diego, but it is Los Angeles. They are 3-point favorites against the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are at home in that game. They will not have fans in the stands in Cincinnati. Total at 42. And I think this line is a little disrespectful to the Los Angeles Chargers, as it opened at 3.5, has come down to 3 in favor of the Chargers. I get it. Tyrod Taylor is a downgrade from Phillip Rivers. But I also think on the road, having a quarterback like Tyrod Taylor is less volatile than having a quarterback like Phillip Rivers. You're going to have fewer turnovers with a guy like Taylor. Probably punt the football a little bit more. But I'd rather play a field position game with some of that defensive talent with the Chargers than starting in plus territory on turnovers on defense. I just think this is a disrespectful line. It's Joe Burrow's first start in the NFL. He doesn't have a genius offensive mind coaching his offense anymore. I'm sorry, did I say a genius defensive mind? A genius offensive mind coaching his offense is how that would work. Anyway, I think it's a disrespectful line. I would go toward the Chargers here, even on the road, even if it is a bit of a square play. Next, an NFC West division game, one where the line has moved pretty substantially. The Cardinals, 7-point underdogs at the Niners, total at 48. Now, the Niners weren't a great team in the NFC West last year, going 2-3-1 against the spread in division, and the Cardinals might have given them more trouble than anybody in that division. A couple of really close games. The Cardinals, of course, adding DeAndre Hopkins could make things even more difficult on the Niners this year. Game opened at Niners minus 7.5. It's come down a half point to that flat 7. I don't like it at the flat 7. If you can get the hook, I think the Cardinals are worth a shot, as there are no fans at this game in Santa Clara. I think the Cardinals, they'll improve this year, and I think it starts right here in week 1. They'll play a tight game, but I don't like it at less than 7.5. Now, the game that almost everybody's talking about heading into this week, Bucs and Saints. Bucs 3.5-point underdogs in the Superdome. Saints top 10 in offensive and defensive ratings per Football Outsiders last year, whereas the Bucs were not quite sure what we're going to get. Obviously, getting rid of Jameis Winston and his 30 interceptions, bringing in Tom Brady. Is Tom Brady washed? We'll start to find out. But personally, I want nothing to do with this game until I see what that offense starts to look like there in Tampa Bay, as he calls it. Saints, by the way, 4-2 in the division last year, and they'll look to get off to a hot start here. One of my Super Bowl picks at 11-1 odds for the season. Couple games left to go here on quick slants on the GBI Show. Sunday Night Football. Cowboys, 3-point favorites against the LA Rams, total 51.5. Highest total on the board this week. And I think it could be a good underspot. A lot of people here expecting points, of course. The explosive Cowboys offense, a Rams team that has played 54, 51 games in their recent past. Cowboys leading the league in yards per play last season at 6.5. But I think the Rams are equipped nicely to slow them down to some extent with Aaron Donald leading a run defense that, again, is going to give the Cowboys a harder time than they would have against most other defenses. And I think the Cowboys are a team that like to set the table with that running game. Not going to be easy against the LA Rams. So I think the under there, 51.5, worth a look. Now we'll move to Monday Night Football. And of course, it's a doubleheader this week, as they do week 1 of every season in the NFL. And it starts with the Steelers and Giants. The Steelers now a 6-point favorite against the home team, the New York Giants. Total 46.5. Now this spread weeks ago was Pittsburgh minus 3.5. So I see no value in Pittsburgh minus 6. I think the Steelers win the game, but at that number, not worth pulling the trigger on, in my opinion. Ben Roethlisberger back. Unfortunately for the Giants, Daniel Jones also back. But again, at this number, not a play for me. I'm going to sit back and just suffer. Just suffer watching my New York Giants once again. And the final game of this week is the second game of the Monday Night Football doubleheader, the Sergio Dip Memorial Game. Tennessee Titans -2.5 at the Denver Broncos. Total 41. And this is a game the line has swung violently. And of course, injuries playing a huge role there. Von Miller likely out for the season. Bradley Chubb also likely out for this game, or at least not at 100%. Cortland Sutton, wide receiver for the Broncos, just today suffered a shoulder injury. So the offense now getting bit by the injury bug. And I've got to wonder what they're doing in practice there in Denver to cause all of these injuries. Maybe UFC Thursdays at Denver Broncos practice, not the best idea. I don't know what they're doing. But that's what happened. And the Titans, the beneficiaries, as now you have a team in the Broncos without their top two pass rushers trying to stop a quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, who was number 1 in the league in yards per pass attempt last season. I don't see that ending well. I don't want to lay points with the Titans here, but I do think the Titans will win the game and start the season that I thought the Broncos would have, even without the injuries, finishing at the bottom of the AFC West. So that's quick slants. You're all caught up on what you need to know to bet on week 1 NFL action. And now it's time for what you're really here for, some picks. How am I going to create wealth for you here in week 1? Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to start with the Chiefs -9 over the Texans. It's happening now. Or if it's not happening now, it's happening shortly. And if you're watching on demand, it already happened probably. Either way, Chiefs -9 over the Texans. Chargers -3 over the Bengals. That is a disrespectful line. Joe Burrow going to struggle, especially against Joey Bosa and that pass rush of the Chargers. Over 42.5 in Washington Football Team versus Philadelphia Eagles. Packers +2.5 against the Vikings. If you want to pull the trigger on the money line with the Packers, I don't blame you one bit. And I have the under 51.5 in the Sunday Night Football game between the Cowboys and the Rams. So those are your 5 picks for the week. 3 of them hit, you make some money. Less than 3 of them hit, excuse me, I'm going to go change my mailing address. Either way, good luck on your bets here in week 1. We'll be back Tuesday. We'll play upon further review, where we will grade my 5 picks for the week and probably poke some fun at myself when one or more of them inevitably lose. And we'll get you some early looks at week 2 in the NFL. Maybe make some selections if the lines are where we like them. We'll see. Good luck on your bets this weekend. Enjoy football this weekend. Thank you for tuning into the GBI Show. I'm Jay Sanin.